I'm Chris Pirillo, and you've tuned into another live Q&A with you and me. That's right, this was streamed live into this channel. And if you were one of the Supernomies, you could have watched it live, as well as watching all of our live videos every single day, plus getting tons of other bonuses, starting at just $2 a month. You want me to answer questions? I love answering questions, including this question. Why can't you delete pre-installed apps? Probably because the company that made the phone that you're using doesn't want you to. That's really the easy answer to that question. There was news that recently surfaced that Samsung was going to allow you to delete pre-installed apps from the Samsung Galaxy S6, which as of right now has not yet been released. What it turns out, however, is they're not allowing you to delete those default apps. They're just allowing you to hide those default apps. It's a step in the right direction. More than anything, a lot of those default apps that are installed on your phone, more on phones that aren't made by Apple than, I guess, Apple phones, even though Apple and iOS has a set of default apps, many of which I don't use. But Apple puts them there, and they don't allow you to remove them at all, if only because they believe it's an essential part of the iOS experience. Or, let's go one level further. You've got something like Newsstand, or possibly App Store, or possibly something else in there in the default array of applications, whether we're talking at this point about iOS or Android or Windows Phone. Any one of those things can bring in more revenue for whoever put them there. So for Apple to put Newsstand there, even though I don't use it, I don't subscribe to any digital magazines or comics or anything like that, it's there because Apple has a chance of making more money for me. That's great for Apple. That's awesome for Apple. Not so much for people like us who really don't use a lot of the default apps. And some people have argued, well, these manufacturers and these OS designers need to make it such that I can decide what my default player for music is. Should they? Possibly. Could that make things more difficult for users? Yeah, kind of. So Apple's wanting to provide a singular experience when it comes to iOS. They don't want to have to deal with someone who's accidentally deleted an app that they didn't mean to delete. That's likely the answer for Apple. Now, as far as the other manufacturers are concerned, I'm fairly confident it is everything to do with financial motivation. When they install or pre-install those apps and they don't want you to remove them or hide them, it's because they're either pulling you deeper in their ecosystem or they're making money from you. PC manufacturers have been doing this for years. Some people would call it crapware. PC manufacturers might say, well, it's a value add. I'm in the middle, honestly, on that, because I've seen really good pre-installed stuff and not so good pre-installed stuff on either side. Where it gets to be a frustration for me when I'm dealing with a phone experience is when a default experience out of the box with a device, and this is really something that Android doesn't really suffer from, but the Android ecosystem suffers from, is when you're dealing with a device that has 3 or 4 default apps that essentially do the same thing. You don't really have that problem with iOS. Apple was pretty clear about that. Said, nope, do not pre-install any apps. You get what we get. That's it. Or you don't get the iPhone. Okay. Would I be happier if I could delete the default apps? Yeah, but I'm also the kind of guy who keeps like a billion apps installed. Where the hell is my phone? Okay, well, just assume I have a billion apps installed. That's hyperbolic. I don't have a billion apps installed. I don't have enough room on my phone, even with 128 gigs. But, there may be a chance that I want to use a default app at some point in time. It would just be there. Of course, I'd probably be able to restore it. Will Apple make that toggle at some point in the future? Possibly. Will Samsung make that toggle at some point in the future? Possibly. Any Android or Windows Phone manufacturer, or I guess experienced designer, will they make that decision? It's completely up to them. But until then, what you've likely got to remember is that keeping those default apps there is a huge financial possibility for any one of those, not just OS designers, just device manufacturers, the people who put the device together and then sell it to you with their brand stamped on it. Because that's the thing. You could buy the phone, but if that phone can continue to generate revenue for the company that sold it to you, dude, why would they want to cut off their nose? Why would they want to make it easier? I totally understand that. So that's the answer. The answer may suck. You may not like it, but that's really the way it is. And I really don't think that's anybody would explain it any other way. But that's a possibility. If you have another answer to this question, that's great. We can agree to disagree. Or maybe we agree. That's awesome if we do. And it's also awesome if we don't, because we can keep the dialogue going forward. Keep asking me questions. Of course, I do give priority to my patrons, but I do answer everybody's questions, as you very well should know. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. But at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices.